Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is an updated and revamped guide on how to wall bounce on Apex Legends. The reason I'm doing this video is because yesterday I was rewatching one of my old videos on how to wall bounce, and without the overlay, proper chapters, it just didn't really feel like a strong video. I've been having a lot of self-reflection on the channel as of late, and looking back a year ago, it amazes me just how much we've improved on our guides here on the channel. And keep in mind, we still always have a long way to go. But I think this is a perfect video to revisit as we close out 2021, and creates a foundation of pretty much all the movement we do in Apex Legends. Now, let us review what we're going to be covering in today's video. Objective 1 will be why velocity is important to wall bounce, how to do a simple wall bounce, the concept behind it, the horizontal wall bounce, strafing into one, meaning going off a wall, of course, wall bounce to get ahead, its real world application, tap strafe wall bounce, advanced wall bounce off of any object, and of course we're going to discuss the best way to practice it, and finally handle wall bounces under pressure. Let's get into it. Now, let us talk about why velocity is important when doing a wall bounce. If you do not garner enough velocity, you won't be able to do an effective wall bounce. It'll fall short a little bit. And the biggest thing to highlight is, let's say when you're walking, you'll just kind of fall short and fall in place. Now, the biggest thing is to have maximum velocity. Whenever you slide jump, you help build that velocity towards it. If you have your weapon out, your velocity that you're running at is at 260 units. When you put your gun away, you're moving at 299. So whenever you are wall bouncing, it is ideal to put away your gun and build up the maximum momentum when slide jumping in. Now, this is applicable even if you're on controller of how to do these inputs. What you need to do is slide in. I prefer to use toggle. That happens to be Z for me. Now, whenever I toggle slide, that's how I build my momentum up. And so I focus less on whenever I'm holding. My hold is on C, and I use that whenever I crouch spam fight, whenever you're fighting in a gunfight. What you want to do is you slide up into the wall, and then you don't have to have any other inputs down or held. You don't need to hold W, you need to hold any other input. All you need to do is slide towards the wall and then press jump. Now, I prefer to use the scroll wheel whenever I'm jumping just because it spams the input. You can also do this by hitting space. Sometimes it doesn't really work as well. You heard me hit the space bar a second ago there, because it's harder to pretty much time. I always tend to do my wall bounces with a scroll wheel. Easier to time, better to get it just right. And there we go, there's the space bar. So I wanted to highlight what it looks like when you do it incorrectly. Whenever you do it right, then you wall bounce. And when you do it wrong, it looks like that. Let's try it again. Let's see if we can get it right. There we go, perfect. But scroll wheel is ideal. If you're on controller, this is going to be much more difficult to do because you pretty much have to spam the input and perfectly time it. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult. This is a simple version of the wall bounce. I highly recommend just doing this over and over again. On a wall, you can do it on this one. You can do it on the wall over here. And just keep repeating over and over and over and over and over again. And we're going to get into the other concepts. We'll see slide, jump, and then hit, jump. Again, slide, jump, hit, jump again. Back up, go forward, slide, jump, and then hit, jump again. Your controller, you will do toggles, jump, and then hit jump again. So you have two jumps, and then you have slide in. Let's now cover the more advanced topics once you get the basic concept down. Let's talk about the most famous use of the wall bounce, and that's definitely using the horizontal one. So the same action applies, but what you're going to do is you're going to hold a direction key whenever you're slide jumping. So it's the same concept, slide jump, but this time you're going to hold A going left, you're going to hold D to hit the wall. Once you hit the wall, that's whenever you can wall bounce. I prefer to do a tap strafe in there just to also kind of help a little bit. It can help build a little bit more momentum whenever you tap strafe it in. And of course, I use scroll wheel forward for W. That's for the tap strafe. You can also spam the input W and then wall bounce. I just did it there just as an example. But the horizontal wall bounce is very, probably the most famous use, especially when you're trying to get away from an encounter, and we'll talk about how you do that movement there in just a hot second. Now let's talk about the real world use if you were being chased, for example, and let's pretend this was not a wall, just like a simple wall, but one that doesn't have the ability to jump over. If somebody's chasing you and trying to catch up to you, wall bouncing ahead can really help you get away and build momentum to be harder to hit rather than running in a straight line. The options that you have in this scenario is you can kind of just strafe around, but the problem is that you start to lose momentum. The easier application is to wall bounce and get away. I do this all the time when I'm playing in matches, and it really, really helps immensely. The only downside is if you mess up your wall bounce like it did right there, then you will pretty much be stuck in place. You want to make sure that you're optimizing the jump and that you go over the wall. And I'm going to show you the advanced version of how to do a wall bounce of what happens when you get stuck right here. I'm going to show that to you in a hot second, so it's good that I made that mistake there. But essentially, whenever you're doing this and trying to get away, the key binds that you're pressing are very, very important to be able to get you to dodge. And there you go. That's a really good one. So wall bouncing, get it ingrained into you. Make sure you feel comfortable with it because it's going to get you out of a lot of nasty situations. And let's talk about how, and there's another good one right there, and whenever you have the velocity. And the reason why, if you're looking at somebody who bounces away, it's much harder to hit them than they were if they were just simply running in a straight line forward. And you have the zigzag option. Now let's segue to discuss how you wall bounce over a wall. Okay, let's tap strafe over a wall now. So it's the same application. You slide jump, and then you use that wall bounce, and you kind of like strafe right into it. So let's do that again. You do slide jump, wall bounce, and then you can use the tap strafe to help you. So you use the W forward on the scroll wheel, but you want to make sure, just like any wall bounce, that you're redirecting. So slide jump, I'm holding A, and then you bounce over. This is really probably the biggest application that's going to help you get over a wall, because if you have somebody who's climbing over, like so, sometimes it can be a little harder for them to catch up to you, especially if you're wall bouncing in the air and you're cutting the angle so short. Let's do that again. So what it looks like, you slide jump, you hold A, and then you pretty much can tap strafe into it just a little bit. Kind of helps you cut the angle. Kind of do it out of a bit of habit now. But that is how you bounce over the wall. So a good place to practice it. And just keep going back and forth over the wall. Now let's talk about the next topic. Now what we're going to discuss is how you tap strafe wall bounce. So what this looks like is tap strafing sharp around a corner or wall bouncing like so. Whenever you normal tap strafe, you're pretty much pressing W while holding the direction that you would like to go. If you don't tap strafe, you have a larger arc, and it's really difficult to cut the angle and cut the corner. That's the example right there. I'm holding A, but it's not enough to cut the corner, cut the angle. It's not simple just pressing A. Kind of helps a little bit, but spamming W and holding A really, really makes the angle really sharp. So it gives you that nice horizontal angle, which helps you go into the wall bounce. So what I'm doing is the same application just as we did building on the basics. You slide jump, cut the corner, and then you jump. You don't have to have any inputs whenever you jump. You can definitely do them, it still works. But then you cut the corner and then you wall bounce out. This is the real world application for this scenario would be if you are cutting a wall. You want to be super sharp around it. I hit a weird lag spike there. You want to be super sharp around the corner and wall. And then you wall bounce over to get you, let's say if maybe there was a rock here or something along the lines to help you get away. Just remember, if you do this, that if they do cut the corner, you're going to be out in the open here. So you're just going to have to keep booking it and running, and then you can keep wall bouncing out. This is a great way to practice it though. Keep cutting these angles. And when you actually have the wall, trust me, it gets even easier to do. That is how to do a tap strafe into a wall bounce. A really, really sharp one. I think that's probably the most difficult version that you're going to do. Anything else, now once you start even doing a very simple tap strafe into it, will become a lot easier and sharper to help you build a lot of momentum. The momentum that you build from a tap strafe wall bounce is pretty strong and really, really cool. Now let's talk about the next topic. Now this next one is going to be very interesting. In my prior guide, I had always highlighted how important it was to make sure you're not pressing any inputs on for a wall bounce. I've learned recently, whenever I was just kind of messing around at a private server, testing things out, the biggest thing that you kind of run into that's really, really important is if you hold a direction that you can wall bounce really, really effectively off of even any surface and object. I've been watching a lot of players 1v1 specifically when utilizing this, and you can tell that I'm doing this almost probably like 8 out of 10 times. I usually still sometimes make a mistake, and the wall bounce is a little short, just like that one. But normally, if you do a normal wall bounce, like a slide jump like this, you'll notice that it's not as effective. And the reason why it's not as effective is because your character is trying to go into a climbing animation. It thinks that you want to hold W and that you want to climb over the wall, so you get stuck like this. The same thing happens on surfaces like this as well. So if I were to slide jump against this surface here, the same scenario would apply. But what I have learned and what I'm teaching today is that if you hold either A or D as you're sliding into this object, it erases that animation. You're tricking the game into thinking that you are effectively, you're telling the game you do not want to climb, and because you do not want to climb, it makes it much easier. Otherwise, if you do not, and you see my hand is not on the keyboard, you go through the climbing animation. So you're probably wondering how they always do these crazy interesting wall bounces off of objects that are very difficult to do it. That is how they do it. You can even do it on objects that are pretty much more difficult than normal. An example would be even this section right here. This is very hard to wall bounce off of. It doesn't really work as effectively. But what you can do is wall bounce off of it as long as you're holding A and D as you're sliding into it. It's the same. We're just adding building blocks onto this. You're pretty much slide jumping, and if you don't hold A or D, you saw when I let go of it on my keyboard there, it messes it up. But if I hold D, when you see, you got to feel the tug. So what this looks like whenever you slide jump, you'll see your character just kind of tugs a little bit. This is without a tap strafe. That tug is what gives you the ability to do an effective wall bounce. And there you go. It pretty much works, I want to say 9 out of 10 times. In game, you're just going to have to get used to knowing when to time it off of geometry. You can even do it off of weird objects like this one. See if it works. There you go. Realistically, if you did a normal wall bounce off of this, it doesn't really work. It messes up and it goes to the climbing animation. Same thing can be said on an object over here on the left side as well. You can wall bounce off of this, but if you do a normal wall bounce, you go through the climbing animation. Let's talk about an advanced application now of using this wall bounce off of an object that maybe somebody who's not at advanced would struggle with. I'm going to wall bounce off of this object, and I'm going to fly over the wall here on the right. You slide jump, you hold it. All right, so now let's talk about a real world application of potentially using the wall bounce off of a smaller object. And this works on a lot of things. It works on cars that you otherwise can't wall bounce off. Anything that you get stuck in a climbing animation that otherwise would be impossible to wall bounce off of. Again, the application is you have to have momentum when sliding. So we're going to slide jump, and then you're going to climb that right there. If somebody was chasing you, it can be a little bit more elegant if you wall bounce effectively off of it. But if somebody's chasing you, one, it would be harder for them to shoot you. And to replicate the movement, it would be a lot more difficult to do it. I'm going to showcase whenever I did it better earlier. I was doing a coaching session. I met a really, really great friend and got to practice this a lot more. But this is the most probably advanced uses that you're going to get out of hitting an object that is otherwise harder to wall bounce off of. I'm going to showcase that footage here now. I might actually have recorded this. This is such a great spot because like you wall bounce above off of something small
as well.
You should be able to. There you go. Look at that. Look at that. That's so clean.
Oh,
like if somebody's chasing
awesome.
you, somebody's chasing you, this is an easy way to get out. If you find a small object, because they would have to execute like that, a flawless wall bounce just to get away. It's really nice.
Yeah. And if they're chasing you, I mean, they would have to do like the climbing animation or...
Yeah, like if they screwed it up and they didn't know how to do this wall bounce, they would essentially end up accidentally climbing, or they would have to go like this over the wall and try to climb to you. They could, in theory, do the wall bounce like this, off the corner and do like a tap strafe back into it. But even then, you're going to get stuck in a climbing animation if you hit the rock right here. So yeah,
you're still losing time there.
Very niche, but if done well, stuff like that, because of holding A and D, it makes a really big difference.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know you could jump off of things that low. Cause it's that climbing animation always gets stuck, you know?
Yeah. Okay, now what we're going to highlight is how to best practice a wall bounce. We're going to circle back to the beginning of the video and talk about just simply slide jumping and hitting the object back and forth over and over again is the best way to do it. Now remember the advanced technique that I taught you where you actually hold A and D and when to apply it, when not to apply it. Now part 2 of this is understanding how to wall bounce whenever you're being shot at and under pressure. Usually whenever you are shot, you initially get a slow, and there is a slow, but afterwards you're pretty much free to build up your velocity and movement. So practice this while you're being shot at and get your armor over and over again. If you can do this while being shot at and there's a slow and then you can slide jump right after, that is how you perfect this wall bounce and become more of an advanced player. Because after you're shot, that's when you can build the momentum. Once you're above around, let's say 230, is whenever you can effectively wall bounce and build momentum. Anything under, I want to say 200 velocity is where you're going to struggle in building that movement and really succeeding. So keep practicing this. Have these target dummies shoot at you. I have a guide as well how to make them shoot at you. in the description down below, so be sure to check out that very quick guide. This is very simple to do to get them to shoot at you. But for those that are newcomers that are saying, how do I apply this in game? Every time I do it, I make the mistake. I don't have enough velocity. This is how you do it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and that is how you wall bounce on Apex Legends. Hopefully you found this guide helpful. Hopefully it's a lot more structured and organized compared to my prior video. I definitely want to help you guys out, and hopefully the advanced thing about wall bouncing off of any object is very helpful to you guys. So you saw the wall bounce there whenever I did it right, and then you saw it, let's see, I'll show you guys whenever you just try to do a normal wall bounce, how it gets stuck. But again, don't forget to leave a like. There it is. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate all of you guys for your support on the channel. Hopefully you guys all have a great New Year's. Hopefully 2022 is even better than 2021. We had a great year here on the channel, and I'm only looking forward to seeing where we go and where Apex Legends goes in 2022. Thank you guys again for all the support, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.